had a couple points. I'm just going to hit one. And I want to talk to you for a quick moment about how there are hindrances to a true move of God or to transformation. And I want to speak to you specifically about a story in the book of Judges, and we're going to go to chapter 8. But before we go there, I just want to give you kind of like a hind story. So you know Gideon, the whole thing, crushing wheat and wine press. You know the story. Then he selects his men. He gets his men. There's wars. We're picking this up in chapter 8, where he's now hunting down the very kings that were after him and that they were at war with. But I want to talk to you specifically about fear and how fear has generational implications. Okay? And I'm going to talk to you for a brief moment, and it's probably just going to be a sermon on itself, but we're going to pick it up in verse 13. And it says, Then Gideon, the son of Joash, returned from battle from the ascent of Heres, and he caught a young man of the men of Succoth. It must have really sucketh to be on the run. He caught a young man. Is it okay to keep doing this? Because I'll just talk out loud.
If you want to. I don't know why it's doing that.
It's all right. Repréndalo en el nombre de Jesús. Now we're Judges 8. Yep. Verse 13. And I'm going to start all over again. Then Gideon, the son of Joash, returned from battle from the ascent of Heres, and had caught a young man of the men of Succoth and interrogated him. And he wrote down for him the leaders of Succoth and its elders, 77 men in total. Then he came to the men of Succoth and said, Here are Zebah and Zalmunna, about whom you ridiculed me, saying, Are they the hands of Zebah and Zalmunna now in your hands? It says that you should give them bread to your weary men. And he took the elders of the city and thorns of the wilderness and briars, and with them taught the men of Succoth. Then he tore down the tower of Penuel and killed the men in the city. And he said to Zebah and Zalmunna, What kind of men were they who had killed at Tabor? And it says, So they answered, Are as you are, so were they. Each one resembled the son of a king. Then he said, They were my brothers. So Gideon's having a conversation with those who had murdered his comrades. He says, They were my brothers, the sons of my mother. As the Lord lives, if you had let them live, I would not kill you. And he said to Jether, his firstborn, Rise and kill them. But the youth would not draw his sword, for he was afraid because he was still a youth. What you see there is a son, a disciple, one of your faithful ones. Here, story after story from a general in the faith of how God would deliver the enemy into their hands. Matt comes in with testimony after testimony, the favor of God, the hand of God in battle. 300 men, he goes into war. He's victorious. Battle after battle, this father's coming home to all of his sons and sharing the testimony of God's faithfulness. One day he decides he's going to take one of his sons with him and give that son the honor of putting to death two of the kings that had destroyed and killed many of the people. And it said that the son was too afraid to draw the sword. You have to wonder what was going through his mind. He walked with his dad. He was discipled. He lived in the same house as the rest of them. And here he is, Jether, and he would not draw the sword, despite the fact that these people had committed murder against many of his family members. And if you go on to read, it's very disturbing. It says, So Zebah and Zalmunna arise. It says, Why has something to kill us? For this man is who is his strength. So is this man, and so is your strength. And so Gideon arose and killed Zebah and Zalmunna and took the crescent ornaments that they were wearing off the camels' necks. So basically, he said, he put them to death. He said, by the way, I'm going to take these artifacts as evidence that I took out these two camels. But if you continue, you'll see that after the death of Gideon, there was no successor, and they turned back to idolatry. Yep. And so it makes you wonder if the son would have took that opportunity to prove himself during a moment of promotion, had he not been the successor of his father. Therefore, after he died, they would have never turned back from a faithful God. And so I want to use the scripture quickly and briefly just to show you that oftentimes the things that are causing you fear are not meant to just rob you of joy and the fullness of God in your life, but it's also meant to generations that come after you. And unless you rise up with the courage necessary to face these things head on, you will oftentimes abandon mission, and therefore others will have to pay. He talked about how nothing comes free. Nothing comes free. And there's an opportunity for there to be victory, for there to be a succession plan. And it's sacrifice, all at the expense of fear. I want you to think about that for a moment, and I want you to think about what is it that God is asking you to do. And if it's causing you fear, well, then that's not necessarily a bad thing. My wife and I are currently in the middle of a transition, and there's lots of anxieties that come with this level of transition. I am leaving the city that I knew most of my life, all my friends and family, and we're transitioning down to a place where I know no one. I have no friends. We don't have pastor friends to have lunch with at 12 o'clock, on a Saturday. It's going to be very different for us. But when we gave our yes knowing that it was going to be an expensive one.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
And we gave our yes the same way that your pastors gave their yes. And part of what we're doing here today is trying to provoke this understanding that you were created for so much more. Jethro right there it was his moment to enter into that so much more, but he couldn't discern the moment. And because he couldn't discern the moment, he misappropriated himself. And when he misappropriated himself, now others have to suffer at the expense of his misappropriation.